Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi Kalayim, Perikei, Halacha Zayin, concluding the 5th chapter, and God willing, starting the 6th chapter, Perik Vav, Halacha Aleph. We're learning today Daf Nun Gimel. We left off on Daf Nun Beis, Amid Beis, by the 2 dots, 5 lines before the bottom of the Amid. And before we go on, let's quickly review some parts of Halacha Zayin. The Mishnah listed various plants that are not subject to Kilei HaKerem. Now, just for the record, some of them are not subject, not even Midrabanan, and others will be subject, according to most Rishonim and Halacha, they will be subject Midrabanan. It's only that they're not subject Midoiraisa, particularly when we learned yesterday for the first time the 2 categories of Min Yerakas versus Min Zeroyim. So as we explained, items that are planted primarily for their seeds is what we are not talking about. We are defining Yerakos, not Mine Yerakos, only Yerakos, as we spoke out many times, as items, plants that are primarily planted for their leaves. That's called Yerakos. In here itself, there's 2 categories. That was the novelty that we learned. Those that are planted in small patches, Mine Yerakos, they are always subject to Kalayim Midoiraisa. And then you have items that are not planted for their seeds, but they are not planted in small patches. They are planted the way Zeroyim are planted. They are planted the way grains are planted. They are planted in a large field. They are called Mine Zeroyim. And Mine Zeroyim, the Mishnah says, they're not subject to Kalayim. And let me just add, according to almost all, it only means that they're not subject to Kalayim on the biblical level, which would mean that you're not allowed to plant them, but if you planted them, they won't create an Isur Hana. That will be the practical difference. Other items that were mentioned in the Mishnah were items that we already learned before, the concept that items that were not planted for consumption. I don't mean human consumption. Even items that were planted for animal consumption are also subject to Kalayim, Midoiraisa. But items that are Bachlal not planted for consumption, that would include items that are planted for their fibers, to make garments out of it. That would include items that are planted for dyeing, for coloring garments, items, as we will see, even condiments, as we'll see today, or certain spices. You don't eat them. They are something that they are to add taste to food. They are not subject to Kalayim. We're going to have in the Gemara a Braisa that will enlist more items that are not subject to the Isur of Kilei HaKerem. And finally, which will be Gavaldik, going back to Brachas, we had this obviously both in Babli and Yerushalmi because it's a Mishnah. We learned a machlokes between Rabbi and the Chachamim concerning brachos for vegetables. We paskin like the Chachamim, and therefore, indeed, whenever we eat a vegetable, if it's not an eitz, we make a boire pri hadam. There's only one bracha for all non-fruits, right? Boire pri hadams. Rabbi Yehuda holds that in even items that are not coming from a tree, there are 2 brachas that have to be made, one or the other, either or. Either for pri ha'adama, like a cucumber, you make a boire pri adama. But Rabbi Yehuda holds that for items like lettuce, you make a boire mine deshoyim. And we're going to link our topic of Kalayim. What's the link? Chevra, trees are allowed to be planted in a vineyard. There is no Isur, not even Midrabanan. Not even Midrabanan. So we're going to touch upon certain items, the irony that you'll make a boire mine deshoyim, according to Rabbi Yehuda, which is a raya that it's not a tree. If it would be a tree, you would make a boire pri ha'etz. And we're going to see whether those items are allowed to be planted in a kerem, because maybe they are a tree. So we're going to be learning about items that are trees but are not trees for Kalayim versus for Hilchas Brachas. And we'll see how we can somehow bring together halachas that appear to contradict one the other. We're going to learn about the tzlaf. We learned about the tzlaf a lot also in other mesechtes. The caper bush. The caper bush has many products. We learned about it. I think it was in Masechta Brachas. And machlokes Beishamai and Beisilal vis-a-vis hilchas Kalayim. That will be more or less the intro and a kitzur, synopsis of the end of Perek Shishi and Perek Chamishi. I'm sorry, Perek Kerem Shecharav, and we're starting today the 6th chapter. Just 1 or 2 very brief words of introduction. until now, whenever we spoke about a vineyard, we use the word kedem, and that's okay. It's the generic word for a vineyard, kedem, abed. However, but really, there are two types of vineyards. You have the vineyard in which the plants, in which the vines are not trellised, they are not elevated. They are on the ground. In English, it's called they are straggling on the ground. And that is the specific type of kedem that we were referring to up until now. Versus when you have the vines elevated and trellised on structures that you make for it or on a wall that was made regardless. But when you lift it off the ragliyos, you lift them off the ground, that's called an aris. And there are different detailed halachas, aris versus kedem. As one example, by the kedem, what's the minimum vines needed to create a kedem? Machlekes Beis Shammai Beis Hillel, they both agree 5. But Beis Shammai holds even if they are in 1 row. Beis Hillel says they have to be in 2 rows. We will see, machlekes, what I'm saying now, machlekes tanoim, that according to some, even Beis Hillel is maida, that by an aris, which is more chashuv, even 1 row of 5 is considered a halachic vineyard for which you need to have the 4 amas of avodah and not the 6 tefachim.
And this is a language of a Mishnah from now on going forward, or just in this case?
No, this is a language that if you want, many times, we can use the word kedem for everything because it's a broader word. But when it comes to certain halachas, there the Tanoim and subsequently everyone else will be machalik between kedem and an aris. I want you to know, if I remember correctly, by Menachas, if I remember correctly, or by Kachim in Bavli, I think we already learned that the grapes that are growing closer to the ground have better quality wine. I think the nesachim that have to be brought in the Beis Hamikdash, remember, we learned different qualities of oil, different qualities of wine. I think they have to come from ragliyos. It's amazing. You would think that the higher up, the higher the worse. When you're grounded, you're better. You produce better wine. Not when you're ruchniisdik flying in the heavens, the way some people think. But coming back over here, you'll see, now, because of this detail, that Beis Hillel, even 1 row of 5 is considered a halachic vineyard, there's going to be a consequence.
Beis Hillel or Beis Shammai?
Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai, always 1 row is enough. Even Beis Hillel, 1 row is enough by an aris, which sounds like a chumrah, right? But we're going to see that Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, because of that machlekes, will have another machlekes. We'll speak about it when we get it inside, in which it looks like Beis Shammai is machmer, Beis Hillel is Beis Shammai is mekel, Beis Shammai is machmer, which is true, but it's not from the Mishnayos where Beis Shammai is the mekel. It's an outcome of what we said until now. You'll see. It's a gavaldik link. We will also learn a new shita that we never knew before. I don't remember, or I forgot. I remember the shitas Rabbi Akiva, that when it comes to a gefen yechidi, a vine that's not vineyard, not kedem, we keep on saying 6 tefachim. We just learned a few daf ago, Rabbi Shmuel, who holds that gefen yechidi needs no avodah. We're going to learn Rabbi Akiva today. Rabbi Akiva holds it needs to have 3 tefachim, not 6 tefachim, 3 tefachim. Another detail, another opinion, and that will be enough of an intro to the 6th chapter. But let's come back to the 5th chapter. We're on daf nun beis amud beis. We are by the 2 dots. The Mishnah listed Eiros, Kisois, Shoshanas HaMelech as examples of Minei Zerayim. Again, we're learning Minei Zerayim is Taka Asan Midrabanan, but there is no Isser Doirais of Kilei HaKerem. So says the Gemara, we want to identify what is it. What's the Eiros? Eiros is Irisoya. Let's go with Irisoya means mint. That's a great example. No, it's mint. When you plant them a lot, not in little batches. Kisois is Kisoisa, ivy. And Shoshanas HaMelech is Kedintoim. And I want you to know that the Rash, initially, when we learned the Mishnah, for some reason I said that Shoshanas HaMelech means a rose, a white rose. No, he suggests it means a rose, and he proves that it cannot mean a rose. Yes, it means this white lily. Now, another Braisa, says the Braisa, Hakonim, reeds cannot mean all reeds, just for the record, but some reeds. Hahigin, Higgin are higgy bushes. It's a type of thorn bush. And ha'atadin. Now, atadin is either an atad bush, is either a rose bush or it's a thorn bush, a certain type of thorn bush. We have goiden ha'atad. You know where we have this in this week's parsha b'Hashgacha Pratis, right? That's when they're on the way to bury Yaakov Avinu. And we're going to see in a moment, guys, remember the atadin, because this will be an issue that the Gemara is going to focus on top of Daf Nun Gimel, a stira between braisos. And this braiso says regarding these konim, higin, vered, atadim, all four, including the atadim, since we categorize them as a min ilon, as we mentioned, a tree, not even rabbinically, is prohibited to be planted in a vineyard. The enim klayim b'kedem at all. Now, whether this atad is a tree or not, we have a problem. But this brayso clearly holds, yes, it's a min ilah. However, hashifa, papyrus, v'hachilas, sedge, v'hagemi, and rush. I want to be honest, not I understand this, not I understand the English. The shara kolagadayim ba'afar, all other plants that grow in the marshes. Here, min deshoyin, they are types of herbs. And therefore, yes, Baharei Hain Kilayim Bikedim. In other words, remember, Min Deshoyim is in the category of Mina Yerakas. So we have Tfua, Kitniyos, Yerakas. That we already spoke about in the beginning of the Masech. Now in Yerakas, we learned yesterday two categories: Mina Yerakas, Mina Zurayim. Mina Yerakas are included on all levels with the problem, with the Isser. Minei Zerayim are less problematic. They're biblically not problematic. And Minei Deshoyim are in the category of Minei Yerakos. Now Daf Nun Gimel asks the Gemara, now we're focusing on the Atad. How can you say the Atad is a Min Ilan, which means even rabbinically you are allowed to plant it in a vineyard? Elohein Minei Deshoyim. We just said Minei Deshoyim is like Minei Yerakos, it's also Midairaisa. And what does he count? He counts the kinaras, the artichoke. Artichoke. Oh, yeah. Good. It's good enough. The hachelma, it's like reading the Torah here with all the comments. The hachelma and mellow. The hadimoya and dimoya. I like it when even the archfield doesn't know what it is, so he just writes it the way I do. Dimoya, and atad. Here we go, atad. So atad is minei deshoyim. Minei deshoyim is also midoraisa. The brayso we had on Daf Nun Beis says that atadin is a min ilan. You got a problem. So here comes the Gemara with an answer, and with the problems the answer will create. And again, reminding ourselves what we're learning from now, on next couple of lines, is only following Shitas Rebbe Yehuda that we had in brachos, that it's that there is a bracha said boire minei deshoyim. Cucumber boire pri hadama, even like Rabbi Yehuda. It's a fruit. You're eating the fruit. You're eating the. When you're eating a grassy, when you're eating lettuce, Rabbi Yehuda, you make boire minei deshoyim. Now, here we go. Answers
what is it? Deshoyim translates to what, Rabbi?
Desha means a herb, or desha means a grass. Bino is desha, yarbitzeni, a grass.
So what would be an example of something that you make that bracha on?
My wife's food, everything she, salads.
Aha, salad, okay.
No, but yeah, okay. Now, not all salads, because in salads you have almonds, and almonds are waiting for your eights. Anyways, let's go. It's not so simple. You know, they brought a kompot to the Tzemach Tzedek for dessert. He takes a look at it and he says, "Oy, I love this kompot." So yeah, when it comes to brachas, you have to really know what you're doing. Anyway, so answers the Gemara, Tamon lebracha. Chaver halt kop over here. That when did we say that? Minei deshoyim, this the brayso that we had now on top of Nun Gimel, Tani Rav Hoshia. But that's when it comes to a bracha, you make a boire minei deshoyim. The first brayso that allows you to plant it in a vineyard is speaking about kilayim. Now, I just want to say the following category. One of the basic ways to define the tree is a plant that the root survives from year to year. Now, there are many details to that. Some plants, they don't survive the way an apple tree survives for many, many years. But if they survive at least for 2 years, it's shaykh for them already to be in the category of a tree. And the atad, thorn bush, its roots survive from one year to the other. And therefore, it's a tree. But we got a problem. Problem is, the problem and a solution. What's the problem? If it's a tree, then why wouldn't we make a bayit priya eitz? Why would we make a bayit minei d'shoyim? It's like a stira. So see, the Yerushalmi is mekatzer. So it goes without saying. In other words, there's a big chiddush here that even if something is a tree, listen to these words. If the tree was not planted for that which you are eating, that's not the reason for which the tree was planted. Then even though it's a tree, if you'll eat some of it, that for which it was not be'ikr planted for, you won't make a bayit priya eitz. The atad is planted primarily for a fence, because whatever grows from the atad is so not chashuv, no one plants it for it. It's planted for a fence, and therefore you don't make a bayit priya eitz. And that will be an introduction to the next lines we're going to have in the Gemara. So now, the big chiddush. It's amazing how they're mekatzer. It's easy to say kan lebracha vekan leklayim, but what that implies is that even if something is ha'etz, doesn't mean you have to make a bayit priya eitz. So I'm going to learn something from it. Based on this, I'll tell you that an esrog, now the esrog tree doesn't only grow esrogim. The esrog tree grows tamaros. Whether the tamara is referring to some bud, whether the tamara is referring to some sort of edible stem, big machloikis, what it refers to. But on the esrog tree, other than the esrog, something else grows that at times, before it hardens, it's edible. It's not planted for that. It's planted for the esrogim, because you're going to pay $500 for the esrog. That's why they planted the esrog. So if that's the case, if you eat those tomatoes, you don't make a bayit priya eitz, because it wasn't primarily planted for it. Esrog, afal pi she'at omer bayit priya eitz. On the esrog, you make a bayit priya eitz. But at omar ala tomato shaloi. But if you eat something that's for which you did not plant that tree for, according to what we're saying, you won't make a bayit priya eitz. What will you make on it? Let Rabbi Yehuda boirei minei d'shoyim. How great is that?
I thought tomorrow grow on the lulav.
Tamarim that the Rabbi Mendel is talking about, I know that tamarim grow on a lulav tree. The word first, tamaros, is referring to something. There are many different types of tamaros. Okay? First of all, it's not tamarim, it's tamaros. Could be that has to do. But it means it's some sort of berry, it's some sort of bud, it's some sort of stem. It's not the fruit proper. Big cloud, what we just learned.
The roses, there's little fruits that grow on those too.
Dan is saying that roses have fruits. That's what we just learned before about the wild rose, the red rose, the white rose, this rose, the lily, and a hanami. That's what we're learning about. Don't forget how. Okay, weiter. Hatzlaf, the caper bush. The caper bush, I remember this from brachas. Many stuff grows on it, many different products. So first of all, let's go back. Beishamai oimrim concerning kalayim. Kalayim bekedem. They are kalayim. Now again, I want to tell you like this. The roots of the tzalaf, it survives from year to year. Okay, that's the big cloud. Then again, hilchas brachas. A root, a vegetable, you put it in once, there's no residual. That's not a tree. A tree is like the insurance business. Once you make a sale, it survives from year to year. Doesn't have to go to oil. In other words, anytime that's the iked remains and it keeps on reproducing, now l'choira, you would say, therefore, the caper bush is a tree. If it's a tree, then you should be allowed to plant it in a kerem. No, says Beishamai. No. Now, why does he hold that it's kalayim? That's everyone is grappling with that. Maybe because it's a very small tree. It looks like minei yirakos or whatever. But that's the chiddush. Beishamai oimrim that even though the tzalaf should be categorized as a tree, let's say for hilchas brachos, kalayim bekerem. However, no, Einoid kalayim bekerem. It's not. However, look at this. Hakoil moedim. Everyone agrees, both Beishamai and Basilo, that what chayiv va'arla. How amazing is that? Now, arla only applies to trees. If arla only applies to trees, then how can Beishamai say kalayim bekedem? Because it's a minyetic. So the Gemara is addressing it. So Tani Rab Chinana bar Papa, he taught the following brayso. Es shuhu oila migizoi. 1 second. Let me. I take that back. Before we go on, in the Gemara, look inside the Marah folder, the first one under the Gemara. Kilayim bekerem. So bebrachis. By the way, this is Bavli brachis. Daf Lamed Vav. Makshinon. I know that because he writes Lamed Vav. But in the days of the Marah folder, you never quoted the Daf the Yerushalmi. That's something that we're beginning to do. Just, remember that Yerushalmi was always quoted Perek Halach. So whenever when there are many Masechtas that you only have in the Bible, you have many Masechtas you only have in Yerushalmi. But whenever you have a Masechta that you have in both, and someone is quoting it, the way you know which one is simple. If it's a Daf, it's Bavli. If it's a Perek Halach, it's Yerushalmi. So he's quoting Brachis Bavli, and the Gemara over there is just addressing what we just asked. Makshina they should say. Since Beishame says Kalayim Bekedem, that's our Girsa, is Araya Minyeriku. Yerakos don't have an Arla. And right away it says in the Zelda Braisa, the Ela Ela Moedim Shchai Arla, Alamin. So the Gemara answers, that's key, that Umashane Beishame Sapuke Mesapkelohu, Beishame has a doubt whether it's a Min Ilan, whether it's a Min Yerek, and therefore, I just want to point that out. The Gemara is not addressing it, the Gemara addresses it in the Babli, the Gemara folder brings it over here, and now let's go back in our Gemara. Here we go. If you have a doubt whether something is an Elon, whether something is a Minyerek, I'll tell you how to know if you have a doubt. A plant that grows from the stem, or if it grows from the trunk. So there's like the root, the stem, and then the plant. That's called a Min Elon. This is not about the roots surviving from year to year. This is a secondary way of definition. If the plant is growing directly from the roots, so it's not you don't have three halakim. Roots, trunk, product. No, you have roots and product. That's an ayah that it's a minyarik. Says the Gemara, if that's the criteria, hativain, harei kruv, cabbage doesn't go directly from the roots. The roots, there's a stem, and then you got yourself a cabbage. That's not a tree. That's a minyarik. No one debates that. Okay? Answers the Gemara that this Tani Rab Chinana bar Papa, the Braisa that he taught, was only when you have a suffix. It's a secondary siman. In other words, cabbage, for some reason, the Gemara doesn't even have to say the reason. Cabbage, vaday minyarik. There's nothing to talk about. No one has a suffix whether you make a boire priya eitz on it. Done. However, when you have other products where there is a suffix, there is where we're using the secondary, the secondary siman of if it's oila migizoi min ilan, if it goes directly from the shiroshav, it's not such a developed. It's shoydish pedi. Shoydish pedi. There's nothing in between. That's considered a yarok. And on that, this is Gavaldik. We say, Hadron Allah Kerem Shecharav, we will, God willing, come back to you, and we'll miss you, but now it's time to move on. And Be'ezras Hashem, we are starting the 6th chapter. And here's what's important. Here's what's important again, that nothing wrong, like Yakir pointed out, for us to use the word Kerem in a more generic way. It's okay. Whether you planted them without building trellises, and they're basically laying on the ground. They're not mamish laying on the ground completely because there is some sort of trunk, and the trunk of the vines in the bottom are thicker than as it goes up. But they're not going to be properly, when you have an image of a kedem for the people here that went to vineyards, the vineyards that we went to are all uddis. They all are trellised. And a trellis will change some of the halachas that we learned until now. And the one that we're going to begin focusing on, Lebeis Hillel, a kerem is dafka when you have 2 rows. Shtayim keneged shtayim, ba'achas yoytzu zanav. When it comes to anadas, we always remain with the minimum of 5 vines. You will never have a halachic vineyard without 5 vines, but Beis Hillel will be moed to Beishami. That's the first din of the mission. So first of all, a zehu aris. Aris means, what do you need to have a gathering of vines upgraded to be classified as an aris? Meaning, you'll need the 4 amas between outside, and it will not suffice. to what we keep on quoting, the consensus, not everyone's opinion, that you need to have 6 tfachim. So says the Mishnah, Haneteya Shura. If you have even only 1 row, Shel Chamesh Gefanim, we still remain with the minimum of 5. But the example of the trellis, it's bedafka. Of course, if you built a structure for each vine, that's avada and others. What happens if you didn't build anything for it? You have property. You planted, let's say, vines. You maybe even had in mind to have them laying on the ground, but it's right near the fence. So you decided, you know what? I'm going to lift up the vines and I'm going to place them over the fence. Now the fence, the sticks, the trellis needs always the minimum height of 10 tfachim. Because if something is lamata ma'asara tfachim, that's already called dida b'tachtonim. You are in the world. So if you have 5 gefanim and they are b'tzada gadol, here's the key: shuhu gavaya chaver turning to the gilal base asara tfachim that has at least a height of 10 tfachim. And the same will be true if it's above the ground 10 tfachim, but not because it's going over a wall, but because right on the side of these 5 vines, you planted them near a ditch. The ditch, again, has to have the same depth here of 10 tfachim. Here, there's another detail similar to what we had above for other halachos, that when it comes to a ditch, it's not enough for it to have the depth. It also has to have the minimum width of 4 tfachim, not 4 amas, 4 tfachim, but arba'am. And what happened is, and you laid the vines on top of the opening of the ditch. You got it? So in other words, since it's above the ground underneath it, 10 tfachim, now it's called an aris. And here, everyone holds, the chiddush is, lebeis Hillel, nois v'loy avodasoy, arba ames. Gavaldik. Now comes, because of the chiluk of a kerem and an aris, there's going to be, dafke because of it, a secondary outcome of another machlekes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. So let's read the words inside, and for that we need to have the picture. And if you can put up the picture, I don't think Kevin is here, that would be helpful. Beis Shammai yoimrim, that, okay, you got yourself an aris, and now you have to distance 4 amas prior to planting any foreign seed. From where do you measure it? What are the 2 options? Do you measure it from the root, from the trunk of the vine? Do you measure it from the wall? Now, the example, if you don't see the picture, what you need to imagine is that you have a row of 5 vines then that are planted, let's say, if you're looking at it, to the right of a wall. And let's say, that just as an example, that there is a tefach of space, an amma, I take it back, an amma of space between the vine and the wall. Now, just by the way, when you're building trellises for each vine, you're not going to build it a amma away. But here, like we're saying, the chiddush is that you have the din of an aris, you have a wall, you planted your kerem, and now you hung it over. The vines can go very long. Do you measure the 4 amas from the vine, or do you measure it from the wall? Now, I want to add don't be shocked. You can ask a kasha, why do you need to have 4 amas? Don't we have a rule that if you have a wall, doesn't the wall then separate between a kerem and foreign seed, telling you that you can plant it from one side to the other? I don't know the answer for that right now. Either we're going to have that kasha later, I didn't learn it yet, and I can already figure out that there are other ways of resolving it, but I don't want to get stuck there. Whenever you need the daladamas and you have the wall, so think about it, Trevor. You would say 4 amas from the vine. Why would you give 4 amas from the wall? Ironically, lebeis Hillel, you have to give 4 amas for the wall. Lebeis Hillel will be a chumrah. Why? Makes sense. Because according to Beis Hillel, if not for the wall, you don't have yourself a vineyard. If not for the wall, you don't have a din of daladamas. If not for the wall, you have 1 row only, you would only have to have 6 tvachim. So what gives it the classification, it's a vineyard? What gives it chashivus? The wall. If the wall gives it chashivus, then you have to count it from the wall. Beautiful. So therefore, Beis Shammai doesn't need the wall. So what do? That's all you need to do. Make 4 amas from the base of the trunk. Oh, Beisila, now Beisila normally is lakula, but here they are lakula. The kula of Beisila is you need to have 2 rows to make a ket. That's their kula. They're moide that by the others 1 row is enough. But the wall is what's machshavit, so you have to count it from the wall. Now let's go weiter. Hold on. Amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, this whole tradition of everything we said until now, and we're going to focus in on what we're talking about, the whole thing is a mistake. He challenges this entire opening of the Mishnah. How often do you have this expression? I don't think that often. Something else. No, he's saying that you guys are making a mistake. That, and he writes, the discussion that we are to have regarding the 4 ames is not about moidedin from the ikar gefanim, moidedin, and I get it. No, you got the whole thing wrong. What is this discussion about 4 ames when there is a wall for something else completely? Im yesh 4 ames from ikar gefanim v'la godel. Only then, so what are we talking about? He's speaking about, look inside the manafulda, guys, keep your finger in the Mishnah, look inside the manafulda, 7 lines from the top. Everything we said now is wrong. The argument between Beisilul and Beishamai is even by an artist. If you only have 1 row of vines, you do not have a halachic vineyard, period. Even if it's trellised. So how much space do you need to Beisilul? Only 6 tvachim. On that says Beisilul, whoa, 1 second. If there is a wall, you can look at the picture. It doesn't matter anymore. In the picture that you're looking at, there's only 1 amma between the ikar gefanim and the wall. Now, what would happen if it would be not 1 amma? What happens if it would be a little bit more? If it would be an amma, it would be 7 tvachim. Then you would say, it's beyond 6 tvachim. Since it's beyond 6 tvachim, you would think you can plant something right near the wall on the same side of the geffen. That's what the Beisilul said. Beisilul said, just like we learned as an example in the previous chapter, if you plant a single vine inside a cleft in the ground, one vine, you need 6 tvachim. What did the Rabbi Yosi, the Tana, say? 1 second, not so simple. It takes up the whole cleft. Only if the cleft has daled ames, so big or more. Oh, there you say that the vine does not occupy the whole hole. And therefore, of course, you need to have 6 tvachim, but after 6 tvachim, you can plant. Same thing over here. That is what Beisilul, whenever you have moidedin, the moidedin is not about this and the field. The moidedin is that even the Beisilul, that when you have 1 row, even if it's trellis, it's not called a vineyard. You only need to have 6 tvachim if there is a wall in the area between the vines and the wall. If there are 4 amas or more, then you only have to distance it 6 tvachim, and that will be good. If it's less than 4 amas, can't plant anything there, because we consider that part of the vine. That is what Beisilul meant to say. How great is that? And let's go right it. Don't forget, guys, the Gemara is going to come back to every stanza in the Mishnah. The Kami Avodas HaGefen. Now, when you don't have a vineyard, 6 tvachim, we can say it, but it's subject to our machlokes, and our Mishnah only brings the 2 opinions, and that is the without a name, because that's the majority opinion of the Chachamim, Shisha tvachim l'chol ruach. However, Rabbi Akiva says no, Shloisha, 3, and we're going to get back to that on the Gemara. And guys, don't forget, we already quoted Shitas Rabbi Shmuel that says nothing. Okay. Now, when we learned our Mishnah, and the Mishnah, I know in the beginning, never quoted in the beginning, Beishamai, but it did say, after it said that if you have an Oris, you need Arba Ames, then Beishamai Oimrim, Beisilul Oimrim, before Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. In other words, it sounds like the Mishnah's opening is Beishamai and Beisilul. Now, I understand why the opening of the Mishnah is LeBeisilul, because there's a chiddush. Beis Hillel said we already learned for 2 chapters. You have to have a minimum of 2 rows. So Beis Hillel says that by an aris you only need to have 1 row. But Beis Shammai didn't change anything. But when you learn the Gemara is beginning from the premise that the opening statement of the Mishnah isn't only a chiddush l'das Beis Hillel, it's a novelty l'das Beis Shammai. The question is, what's the novelty? That's what the Gemara is saying. The kasha al dati de Beis Shammai, which is that beloy kach eino asam mishum kerem l'chayda, there is no novelty. Now you would say, who says there's a novelty? You have to know how to learn the Mishnah. What's the fact that the Mishnah says Beis Shammai yominim Beis Hillel yominim? They both stated the ratio. And there is a chiddush even leBeis Shammai. There is a scenario, not according to Rabbi Yechon and Danuri, that because of the aris, it becomes a kedem. Without the wall, without the trellis, even though there's 5, it would not be a vineyard. Yes, there is a novelty. Where will be the novelty? Reish Lakish explains that today, Reb Shimon Lakish Amar, I'll tell you, we learned this many daf in the beginning of the Masech. It was quoted already. Ba'aros hama'ukam shanum. We're talking about a crooked vineyard. Now, if the Gabbai can please put up a picture, don't think crooked the way you think crooked. You can call this a W, even though you're not going to see the W. So you have to be a stargazer to see the W. So what you have is you have only 1 row, and the 1 row is comprised of 5 vines, and the trellis. Let's go that the 3, which is the 3 is the top, the middle, and the bottom. They are mamish by the wall, by the trellis. The other 2, so if you want to give numbers, milmaila lomata 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, numbers 1, 3, and 5 are all the way by the wall. Numbers 2 and 4 are removed somewhat from the wall, and whichever direction. That's what I'm calling a W. They are not aligned. Now I know we learned the Mishnah in the last chapter about the ikid is, we said the ikid is the vine. They have to be aligned. They're not aligned. So without the wall, even leBeis Shammai, you don't have yourself a kedem. But because you have a trellis, or because you have a wall, or because you have any structure over which you are overhanging the vines, the structure is aligned. That is what creates the kedem. Now, having said that, we're going to have to revisit, God willing, Sunday or Monday, our next year, the way we explain the Mishnah, that Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, do you measure from the wall? Do you measure from the vines? Beis Hillel says you measure from the wall because the wall is that which is creating the kedem. All of that speech was just knocked off right now. Because Beis Shammai is speaking about a scenario that without the wall, you don't have a kedem. And therefore you don't need dollar damas. But let's read it inside. Ba'aris hamu'ukim shan. In ba'aris hamu'ukim shan b'loy gader. Eino aser mishum kerem. That's what the Mishnah is really telling you. Even according to Beis Shammai. And again, what's the chiddush? The chiddush is that since it's an aris, that's the beginning of the Mishnah. It's as if the Mishnah begins, Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel both say that if you have a shura shel chamish gefanim, and it's B'tzad HaGeder, because they are being hanging, because they are trellised over the wall, they become a kerem. That is the word of the Mishnah. And guys, I know a lot more to go.
That?
You got it, Danny?
No, I don't understand why Beis Shammai holds that the wall makes it a vineyard.
No, okay, first let's go back. We learned in the previous chapter that a row has to be aligned with a detail. And we're not looking for the vines, we're looking for the roots. So remember that. And if you remember, we had a machlokes tanoim. There were 2 gersois, how to measure the alignment. Whether you need to have a tefach, remember that the row picture, and it doesn't matter. Okay, this is a case where the row is not aligned. If they would have been ragliyois, if this would have been a vineyard in which the vines are straggled on the ground, it would not be a vineyard even leBeis Shammai because they are not aligned. But Danny, the wall is aligned. There's a logic to it. And you're taking the vines and you're hanging it over the wall. Now you align. Now it's called a kedem.
But the other 2 that are not directly behind anything, right, that are straggled or the W, right?
They're not straggled. The vines from the other 2 are also over the wall.
Oh, got it. Okay.
That's the word. That's
got it.
where you got stuck. Okay, Chavra, we'll stop over here.